While the eyes and the mouth can be sealed, an ear has no lid, nothing to close. The ear is simply present to the world. We listen with the whole body, our whole self. When you practice listening with the whole self, you expand the scope of your consciousness to include vast amounts of information otherwise missed and discover more material to feed your art habit. Communication moves in two directions, even when one person speaks and another person listens silently. Formulating an opinion is not listening. Neither is preparing a response or defending our position or attacking another's. To listen impatiently is to hear nothing at all. Listening is suspending disbelief, paying attention with no preconceived ideas. While creating and defending a story in your own head, you miss information that might alter or evolve your current thoughts. Listening without prejudice is how we grow and learn as people. So that's like a bit of an excerpt or whatever from a book called The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. If you don't know who Rick Rubin is, he's like this, famous. I wouldn't say famous. You might have not have heard of him, but he's a producer, and he's been producing for a lot of rock bands and a lot of hip hop artists. And he came out with this book, I think like last year maybe. And I got it like basically maybe a month or so after it came out. And through my first time reading it, like of course I felt a lot of things throughout this book. And it provides a lot of great information, right? But I want to just break down this, excerpt from this chapter. The chapter is called Listening, and I just kind of read some of the stuff that I underlined in the chapter. So when it comes to listening, you might depending on the type of person you are, you might have heard that oh, you're a great listener, or you like to listen, or I like that you remember this and that, or sometimes maybe you're always told, oh, you don't listen, you need to listen. Why didn't you hear me? You need to listen. You can't listen. You're a horrible listener, right? And so as he was just saying, when we are already kind of responding to what someone is saying as they are speaking to us without even getting, or at least hearing what they have to say fully, we basically shut off our ears, right? Or yeah, we shut off our ears. And that leaves us blind, practically. That leaves us blind to the situation, and we start to formulate our own opinions and our own thoughts and our own ideas that don't allow for proper expression on both sides, right? When I am speaking with someone and, they're, especially when they're venting or if they're expressing themselves, I try and keep my mouth shut. Right? And then what you realize is that people, everybody, even yourself, I bet, they like to be able to have the space to just talk freely, right? A lot of the times when I speak and I stay silent, but I maintain eye contact and I make sure I'm attentive and whatnot, they will speak some more. They will end up speaking more. They could be saying oh, blah, 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 do this and this happened, right? So does it even make sense for that to happen? And then let's say it sounds like a question, but I don't answer it. I just look at them, and then they end up being able to speak more, and they speak more, and they speak more, and they speak more. And then they walk away from the conversation and be like, man, I just had a great conversation. And it's funny because most of the time it's really them, that had the conversation, right? You were just there receiving the information. And that's what's kind of best for when it comes to speaking, right? We love being listened to, and we should develop the ability to listen to others, to be that ear, all right? Not the mouthpiece that keeps speaking and blabbering and whatnot, right? I've had experiences where maybe I'll I'll vent to someone close to me and whatnot, and then they always trying to have something to say. But it's you don't have to always have something to say, right? It's the reason why people will want to speak, they feel like they need to speak in response, especially when someone is venting to them or whatever the case may be, is because they feel like they have to help in that moment, right? But sometimes just you sitting there and just taking in what they're saying and listening and just being attentive and just allowing for them to speak is going to be a lot more beneficial than you trying to interject with some advice or anything like that, right? And what's important as well is to also ask questions. Make sure you ask questions as someone is speaking to you, so that way you can receive more information, and that way they can talk a lot more and you can get in more in-depth detail, right? Because sometimes we'll you can't even call this listening. We'll kind of hear someone talking to us and we don't engage, right? We don't engage. We don't ask any further questions. We don't wonder about anything else. We just kind of allow for them to talk, and then that's about it, right? We don't try and think of like anything deeply or try and get more background information or context clues. That's also not a form of listening. Just sitting there and just like looking at them, that's not a form of listening. You kind of have to actively listen, and a part of actively listening is to just basically ask questions. If there's anything that they're telling you about, and you're wondering, how did this work out, how did that work out, how did they respond to this, then you should basically just ask questions. And when you ask questions, people are going to appreciate that a lot more, because it shows that you're listening, it shows that you're interested, and it shows that you want to be able to get the fullest picture of the story, right? So it's just so important. It's so important for us to listen. And it's like, as he said here, the ear is simply present to the world, right? So we I guess as human creatures, we like to constantly think about the past and the future. And that's all in our head, that's all in our mind, right? But our ears are the ones that receive the present world. Same with our eyes, but we can imagine, we can picture stuff right in our mind, so we can end up fooling our eyes, right? But our ears, we can't trick our ears. We can't trick our ears into hearing something that is going to be coming up, like, tomorrow or something like that, right? At least we don't have that much of an ability to do so that is, I guess, as maybe tangible as, seeing something, if that makes sense. And so when you hear noise, let's say maybe you're meditating and you hear like a car pass by, that's you in the present moment receiving the presentness of that car passing by, right? And when you're talking to someone or someone is talking to you, you are in that present moment. You are receiving what they are presently talking to you, what they are telling you, what they are speaking to you, without you kind of going off and just like thinking about something else, right? Because sometimes someone can be saying something and then you space out because what they said, you thought of this, and then that made you think of this, and now you're having a conversation in your head, and then now you're lost in the conversation, right? This stuff like this can happen at school very often. Stuff like this can happen very often with close friends and stuff like that, and it just happens to muddle things up, and it can be kind of infuriating, right? Especially if, like, maybe you're the one expressing yourself, you're giving, like, a heartfelt, you're pouring yourself out and everything, and like, wait, sorry, can you say that part again? I spaced out, right? I guess it can be kind of disrespectful, right? And what happens is that it kind of messes up the the communication, right? Because listening, attentive listening is a form of communication. Here he says communication moves in two directions, even when one person speaks and the other is silent, right? So again, like I just said, attentive, being there, being present. It's so important to be present, right? It's not as engaging, and it's not as, I guess, beneficial when you're having a conversation with someone who is busy doing something else, who is planning out stuff for another day, who is going over their day from yesterday and things like that, because they're not present. They have, they have one foot here in the exact moment, and then they have the rest of their body out, and worried about tomorrow, or thinking about yesterday. And so it's very important that we create these moments of presentness, not just with listening, but well, actually it can. With listening to our bodies, with listening to just our environment, with listening to the people around us and the people we love, and just taking in everything that is so present around us, or that is around us presently. And then also to be present when it comes to listening to your body, right? Our body is a vessel, and the mind and the body are connected, right? The vessel holds the mind, the vessel holds the soul, the consciousness, and it's something that we have to listen to and we have to take care of, right? Just because you're I don't know, maybe there's like some weird aching pain, but then you tell yourself, your mind tells yourself that it's okay, it's not that bad. That's not a good thing, you should try and figure that out. You should try and figure out what's going on. Why do you have this persistent aching pain? And the only way you can find that out is by listening to your body. So it's very important, when it comes to listening, it's to listen to your body. Listening is a form of communication, and your body's trying to communicate something to you, and you need to be able to listen to it. You need to be able to communicate back and make adjustments. And the same thing with our mind, right? When our body starts to degenerate at some point, the mind starts to suffer. Our soul, our brain, it starts to suffer. So it's very important for us to just, like I've been saying a good million times, attentive listening, just listening. It's just such a great thing to be able to listen, right? I've been told, not to toot my own horn or anything, right? But I've been told that I'm a good listener, that I'm a great listener, or even a great conversationalist, right? Because I just try not to, I guess I'm like usually a quiet person, and I just try not to be like, oh, no, that's crazy, bro. For real? Nah, bro. If it was me, bro, I wouldn't have no. It's like, no. Not even that. I don't even try and, like, always try and give advice or anything like that unless they directly ask for it, or if it feels like as if in that moment they're desperately looking for some type of answer. Then I'll try my best. But if I don't have an answer, or if I don't have anything to say, then I'll keep my mouth shut, or I might just tell them directly, right? But it's more encouraging when even if you don't have an answer, it's more encouraging to just be listening, right? Because as someone is talking, they can kind of figure things out on themselves, right? Especially when they're having that feedback of someone who is hearing what they have to say, and is willing to just to be open to whatever it is they're saying, right? And that's one thing too. Don't when you're listening, don't judge that person, right? Don't judge that person in that moment when you hear what they have to say. Go into every conversation without any preconceived, I guess, like beliefs or positions, or trying to defend something, or trying to judge someone and stuff like that. Because, for one, anytime you're having a conversation with somebody, even if it's just like, how's the weather, or, whatever the case may be, they are still kind of being vulnerable and opening yourselves up to them. So just make sure to be attentive and listen. And yeah, take care. Peace out.